Welcome to Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson. Today I have 8 tips to get good deals at firearms auctions. I have learned these tips using both online and in-person auctions, as well as working at some of these auctions. The main focus of this particular video is if you can attend in-person auctions, but several tips will be relevant to online auctions as well. Though if people ask for it, I can make a separate video focusing on online auctions specifically later. I think even with prices kind of out of control at the moment, the best deals I have found have been at auctions in person. Everything you see here I bought at auctions for $200 or less over the last few years. You just never know how much it will go for, and there are a lot of competing factors for people. Maybe they're waiting on something else to come up at that auction. Maybe they have already spent some money and are a little gun shy. Either way, auctions are a great place to find some deals. The first tip is to know your price. Know how high you are willing to go on any one item before you ever bid. Maybe even write it down so you don't forget in the heat of the moment. The last thing you want to do is get caught up bidding back and forth with someone because you're riding an adrenaline rush or just don't want to lose out to someone else. I can't tell you how many times I have seen two people absolutely determined to win something and they keep raising the price to something absurd. I've seen this where in person they end up paying more for a modern, currently produced firearm than I would if I walked over to the gun store in town and bought one new. It can be wild to watch, and this does not go for just one item. Budget out your entire auction with what you want the most and how much you are willing to spend with different scenarios playing out, because things are not organized most to least favor in your favor. Maybe the item you want the most is halfway into the auction, but you'd like some other items earlier and later. You can put yourself in a pinch if you spend too much too soon and miss out on the item you want the most, or you could miss out on a deal if you are being too careful. Maybe you're willing to spend more on items later if you haven't won anything yet, but don't get caught feeling like you need to though, bringing us to our second point. Be okay leaving empty-handed. Kind of a follow-up to the first point. I've driven an hour or more to go to an auction and left without winning anything. It can be discouraging, but don't commit to the idea that you must buy something because otherwise you've wasted your day. If it is not a good deal, it's not a good deal. Some auctions you can just tell right away that everything is going to go too high and you probably won't get anything at a good price. You have to know going in that you aren't out anything just because you did not win something. Use it as a learning opportunity. Hopefully you see something unique or get a better feel for prices or a good strategy when you are bidding. You can also talk to others and maybe make some friends since they obviously share interests. The auctioneers will even sometimes call out when they're on the last few items to get a response from people who have not won anything, but don't fall for it. That brings us to the third tip: bid to win, not out of spite. I know people who sometimes bid other people up because they get mad at them for winning something they wanted, or they see them bidding on the same things they want and want them to spend more money. There's nothing wrong with it in a sense, just the danger you will end up holding the bag and be forced to pay for something you didn't really want or at a higher price than you wanted. I've even heard someone say to a friend that they think that guy over there is bidding him up, so then they started to try to bid that guy up whenever he was getting something. Some people think of this as a long-term strategy to get people to spend their money so they have less money for something you want, but that can also backfire and they can bid against you solely because they figured out you are doing it to them. Number 4, know your stuff. When it comes to auctions, I think nothing is more important than knowing your stuff. This is sometimes easy to overlook, or you can be overconfident in gun buying in general. Sometimes auction listings are posted incorrectly and without pictures online, or with pictures photographed with like a potato or something. But other than that, you generally know what is going to be at an auction before you arrive on site. This gives you the opportunity to look up information ahead of time. Be sure to know what to look for on firearms you're interested in before you show up if it's in person. If it's online, be sure to closely examine pictures for everything. There are a lot of listings that aren't too descriptive and say, look at the pictures. So be sure to look for missing pieces or markings that should be there. Descriptions can be wrong, listings can be wrong, so it's up to you to figure out what you are looking at and bidding on. They also always say they make no guarantees on these firearms, if they work, if they're complete, so it is up to you to check it out. Also, as part of this point, auctioneers can be wrong too, not just in the listing, but in what they say when they are doing the auction. I've been to an auction where the auctioneer kept saying certain firearms were antiques or would be in a year, but that's not how firearms antiques work. So yeah, I can't rely on them to be accurate either. A few anecdotes to this point. I have a fake Argentine carbine because I did not follow my own rule. This was turned into a carbine by an importer, so they are all over the place, oftentimes mistakenly or purposefully listed as a carbine when it is a cut-down rifle. Now, I did do image searches and auction searches real quick, finding multiple listings and pictures of this rifle, so it's not just a one-off sporterized rifle. There were enough pictures and active listings that I thought was legitimate without actually reading through the history ahead of time, which would have easily let me know what I was dealing with. I have a video about this specific rifle on the channel already if you want to know more. And another time, I was at an in-person auction bidding against someone on a Hakim, and the auctioneer looked at it when it was up for bid and told everyone that he thought it was incomplete. And everyone seemed to agree. That's because when people were looking at it beforehand, someone locked open the action and set it back down. The Hakim has a unique action, so it's not intuitive for most people. The auctioneer announced it looks like there's something missing and you're buying it as is. Another auction goer in the front row even looked at it and eventually agreed. So I was bidding back and forth with someone else who obviously also knew that it was complete, and I hear people whispering around me, why are they bidding on something that's broken? I eventually let it go and did not get that example, but it was funny to hear others comment on it acting like we did not know what was going on when they were the ones who didn't know. There are no friends at an auction. Generally, don't trust anyone at auctions, as the old saying goes, there are no friends at an auction. That's usually in relation to don't be afraid to bid against people you know, but that's not what I'm really talking about, and I'm not saying everyone is nefarious or a trickster. I have had plenty of pleasant interactions with strangers, but it is worth being on guard. Things can be labeled incorrectly, or people can be telling you things incorrect. The friendly person next to you can be giving you advice, telling you about a rifle saying it's only worth $200, and then they bid past $400, which I have literally seen. Auction companies usually don't know their stuff. I've seen auctions sell empty boxes of primers and ammo because they either never looked or maybe they were stolen beforehand. They did basically erase that bid, but you never know. People may also steal your stuff, so watch it or gather it together as you go, or bring something to stuff them into. This is more for ammo, bayonets, that sort of thing, because guns are usually pulled aside and checked out separately, at least every auction I've been to. So as soon as they say sold, it is your responsibility to safeguard it. Do not leave stuff around carelessly. I know there are auctions where people walk away with the stuff someone else bought. If buying stuff comes out of boxes or ammo, count it. Don't trust what is written on an ammo can or box of stuff, unless it's like single rounds, but boxes, for instance, you can easily count up and verify. Also, people may shift things around to make a particular group of parts or surplus more appealing to them from the time you initially are looking around and when the auction starts. So be sure what you want is still in a box if you are bidding on it. Another important rule that I have also broken: be sure to thoroughly examine everything before you bid. This goes for anything you would even potentially bid on. Consider the ludicrous thought of, well, yeah, I would pay, X amount of dollars for that firearm, but it will never go that low. Be sure to pay attention to that stuff as well as the things you're actively thinking you'll bid on because they are a priority. That is because sometimes these random items could always go for that low ball amount, and maybe they should only sell for that amount. If you did not inspect it closely at first glance, there could be a reason it's about to sell so low. If you throw a bid on it, you may be taking a gamble. I spent $25 on a single shot shotgun because it was like 20. I was like, well, I'd buy it for that. Well, the stock had some interesting repairs and the action is still a little gummy, so it's pretty much a wall hanger. It still wasn't a bad deal, but it is an important lesson to not react to the, oh, I'd buy it for that, if you see something close to selling at very little or even no other bids than the initial one. I can also say from experience, look at every little detail. Check the sights, check the sling swivels if they should be there, carefully inspect it. I picked up this ruby for a good deal. The front sight was dirty and I didn't think much of it until I cleaned it off when I got home and found the front sight is made out of what appears to be a penny. Yep, that's not standard issue. I got bubbaed, but I felt this one is kind of funny and has its charm. Plus, I did get it for pretty cheap. Honestly, I don't necessarily know what I would have done differently here to actually notice it, since I wasn't going to be cleaning it ahead of time before I bid, but paying a little more attention will never hurt. Pick your auctions. Something I've noticed and I think is a good tip, though it may not always work, pick your auctions. I buy military surplus pretty much exclusively, and the best deals I have found are generally auctions that are not the big milsurp focused auctions. I seem to get the best deals when it's a larger auction and maybe 10 to 20% are milsurps. I believe this is because most people either aren't desperate or maybe not sad enough to sit through an auction that is an entire day with items they mostly have no interest in. Typically in auctions like this, what I am after is surrounded by random 22s and sporting shotguns, which I can appreciate and find interesting, but it is not my area of collecting. That means most of the people at the auction are not going to be your competition because they are there for the primary focus of that auction. Let's say there's a lot of Winchesters or Colts that are a big pull of the auction, but you have little to no interest in actually buying those. Well, most people attending will be fighting over those and focusing on them. Now, this may backfire because it also really limits the chances you have if you have a general collecting interest and aren't too specific. So don't go out of your way for an auction that has only one or two items either, because you never know what's going to be pulled between listing and day of auction, as well as someone else could be there for that item specifically as well. One time it was announced that a C96 broom handle Mauser in auction was actually deactivated with something welded in the barrel, which was not noticed before the day of the auction. I know there are people in the crowd that traveled exclusively to bid on that item. That is not to say avoid auctions that have the same focus as you're collecting. Just keep in mind it will attract more people like yourself, and you may pay more at that auction than others. And the final tip, be prepared and familiar with auctions. Auctions generally are all run the same way. You show up and get a number to bid, and when you win something, you have to check out with your bidder number to receive the firearm. Do not be intimidated by the process or get swept up in it. It's really not that complicated if you're paying attention. Most of the time, like I said, they will let you take possession of ammo, bayonets, parts, etc. immediately after winning with your bid while the auction continues. But don't expect to grab your rifle and parts and immediately check out. Most of the time, they have a sheet where they record 20 items or so and then hand that to the cashier to put it all together. Be careful of waving indiscriminately during an auction. I know it's kind of a movie and TV cliche, and they probably will realize you're not bidding in reality. But on the reverse side, try to make eye contact with the auctioneers or their assistants when you are bidding on something that you'd like. Knowing basic auction terms will help you budget both time and money as well. Some auctions will throw on a buyer's premium on top of your final bid, or local taxes on top of what you buy, or sometimes both. I have also been to an auction that did not let you touch any of the firearms and you could only look, so be sure to bring a bore light or a small flashlight. Some auction houses don't have an FFL and make you go to a local pawn shop or gun shop to transfer the firearms over to you afterwards, which can also charge you their transfer fee as well. Every auction is different, so be sure to read the fine print on their website or ask questions when you get there and get your number. Usually they do go over these terms at the start of the auction, but if you miss it or were distracted, don't be afraid to ask the cashier or someone else working the auction for clarification. Preferably not the main auctioneer if the auction's going on, because that's just annoying. Also, you need to understand the terms times the money or whole lot or one money. It's pretty self-explanatory if you think about it, but this goes back to know what you're bidding on. I've seen an online auction where they switched back and forth between the two terms with lots that had multiple boxes of ammo, but two people must have thought a particular lot of 7.62 by 39 was one money when it was actually times the money, so you pay that set amount per box, because they bid up to about $180 per box of 20 rounds, and the other lots around it that were one money were also about $180 for the entire lot of ammo. Long auctions can last all day. Generally, you can estimate about 1 minute per firearm. Usually it winds up more overall though, because it can be stretched out longer based on how people are bidding or on how they sell other items as well. They usually will intersperse ammo and other items in the middle of it, so people don't leave after all the guns are gone. And that long day can be inside with nice AC, or out in freezing weather, or out in blistering heat. I was at an auction where there was some really good stuff, but was 100 degrees all day, and there was a lull in the middle where there was an hour and a half on coins. I really should have left during that time and come back, or at least sat in my car for the AC, because by the time they got to some good stuff at the end of the afternoon, my brain was just fried. I should have bid on things that were selling really low, but I just was out of it and left before it was even done because I felt terrible. Separately, there was another auction that was going really long with a lot of items in the middle that had zero interest for me, so I left, got a quick lunch, and came back refreshed and ready for the rest of it. Anyways, this is what I have noticed, both attending and working gun auctions. They're also fun even if you don't win, so I would suggest trying to find some near you if you've never given it a try. And I know I said there are no friends at an auction, but that doesn't mean someone won't try to make a deal with you to sell you a few things out of a box of parts, or maybe even some ammo if they got a big lot, just because they weren't really interested in that particular item or don't want all of it. Hopefully at cost, or maybe just a little higher if you don't need everything. But keep in mind, you can make secondary deals with another buyer, though the auctioneers may not really appreciate it. You can also meet up with friendly people who share your interests. So that's my list for how to get good deals on gun auctions. Comment below if you have some good auction stories or if you think you have additional advice that could help people out. Please like this video if you found anything useful or helpful, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for watching.